Perception is power. Change your perception, see everything flow in your favor. Written and published by Books Reader. Introduction. The majority of individuals navigate life without realizing that what they perceive is not the world itself, but rather their subjective interpretation of it. Much like wearing tinted lenses, perception acts as a filter, shaping, coloring, and sometimes distorting every experience. These perceptual filters may be clouded by outdated beliefs, emotional residues from past failures, or deeply ingrained generational fears. Consequently, a reality that may be inherently supportive or favorable remains unrecognized due to misaligned perception. This book does not advocate for naive idealism or baseless positivity. Instead, it offers a structured inquiry into how perceptual frameworks influence one's experience of reality and how recalibrating these frameworks can lead to profound shifts in awareness and outcomes. It is about knowing the power you possess in this moment to change your reality by altering how you perceive. Your perception is not a point of view, it is a creative power. Every choice you make, every emotion you experience, every opportunity you see or fail to notice is directed by what you perceive about yourself and the world. Two individuals may travel through the same storm. One observes destruction, the other perceives cleansing. One perceives chaos, the other creation. The storm remains the same, but perception makes it so. This is the secret people are never taught. Reality isn't static. Reality is flexible. Shift your perception, and your entire experience transforms, because perception shapes everything. Beneath your awareness, a quiet narrative is constantly playing in your mind. This inner script, shaped by childhood conditioning, societal influences, and emotional scars, becomes the lens through which you see the world. If that narrative tells you life is difficult, unjust, or always working against you, your perception will instinctively seek, and find, evidence to confirm it. But when you begin to rewrite that inner story, to believe that life is supporting you, that every moment carries meaning and momentum, a new reality begins to unfold. One of alignment. One of possibility. One filled with grace. This is not magic. This is attitude, and attitude influences behavior, determines your emotional state, and eventually shapes the results you get. Altering your perspective isn't being wishy-washy and pretending that everything is just fine. It's deciding to look for meaning, forward motion, and potential even when things don't work out. It's reframing your questions. Instead of, why is this happening to me? You wonder, what is this here to teach me? Instead of, how did I mess this up? You wonder, how is this leading me to something better? These tiny adjustments in thought make monumental adjustments in emotion, energy, and actions, and gradually, they start to recreate the entire landscape of your life. The truth is, you don't have to struggle with life in order to be successful. You don't have to push for results, control situations, or validate yourself. You just need to flow with the current that already has your back. That current exists. It's been there all along, but to enter it, you have to imagine that it is there. You have to discipline your perception to notice signs rather than obstacles, guidance rather than detour. Life reflects your dominant perception. It reflects your expectation, not your wish. If you expect favor, favor appears. If you anticipate loss, loss ensues. This is not superstition. It's psychology and energy in motion. This book is your companion to make that transition last, not by denial, not by refusing to feel, but by embracing a new perspective that brings clarity, confidence, and serenity. Each chapter will present you with a new lens, a new frame, a new invitation to enter a reality where all is serving your growth. You'll start noticing patterns where you used to notice problems. You'll see timing that used to appear random. You'll realize that the world wasn't working against you. It has been waiting for you to awaken and perceive reality. It's all going in your direction. Chapter 1. The Invisible Script. Every individual has within them an invisible script. It hums in the background, quietly like an operating system we did not install, and yet it controls nearly everything we think, anticipate, and feel. This script is composed of ideas we didn't select, thoughts we didn't challenge, and conclusions we adopted in our earliest years, long before we had the authority to think independently or intentionally craft our own state of mind. These subconscious beliefs are the basis of our reality, and out of that reality, we start constructing our lives. But what if that groundwork was faulty? What if the script was scripted in fear, scarcity, and limitation? From birth, we pick up the emotional environment that we're in. We learn by observing, listening, and feeling. If the people taking care of us were suffering, we learn to suffer. If we heard phrases such as money doesn't grow on trees, life's not fair, or don't get your hopes up, we began to construct a worldview that linked survival to struggle and ambition with disappointment. This scripting is not merely verbal. It is energetic. A child who senses tension, shortage, or emotional unpredictability will create beliefs that the world is unstable, unsafe, or unfriendly. And unless challenged, those early impressions solidify into lasting expectations. The insidious thing about unconscious perception is that it becomes self-fulfilling. If you think the world is dangerous, you will find threats in safe places. If you think love always hurts, you will mess up intimacy or pursue emotionally unavailable individuals. If you think success is reserved for those types, you will quietly prevent yourself from ever becoming one of them. The script becomes a cycle, and that cycle becomes your life. The annoying thing is that most people believe they're being objective. They'll tell you, "I'm just realistic," not seeing the fact that realism tends to be merely old-fashioned pessimism masquerading as logic. You're not broken. You're scripted, and the script isn't what you are. It's merely a set of old ideas that you've been practicing for years, usually without even noticing. But here's the reality. Any script can be rewritten. Any lens can be swapped out. The instant that you become conscious that your perception has been preconditioned by old programming, you start to take your power back. And that awareness alone shatters the illusion. You start to notice that perhaps your experiences were not evidence of your limitations. They were merely a reflection of what you thought to see. This does not mean you are responsible for all that's occurred to you, but it does mean that you hold the power to redirect what comes next. When you grasp that your outer reality is reacting to your inner script, you release being the victim and become the author. That transition is everything. The script that was invisible becomes visible, and when it's visible, then it's editable. You can challenge the thoughts you've inherited. You can challenge the assumptions that no longer assist you. You can examine your default responses and say, "Where did I get this from, and do I still need it?" The journey starts with honest observation. Notice your thinking during times of resistance, fear, or uncertainty. What are you saying to yourself? What do you unquestioningly believe to be true? When an opportunity arises, do you feel undeserving or thrilled? When an obstacle arises, do you prepare for loss or expect to grow? These moments expose the script in the present moment. They inform you about the unconscious assumptions forming your choice. The work is not to criticize yourself for them. It's to identify them as choices. Once you recognize them as choices, they start to lose control. Occasionally the script presents itself in disguise as personality. "That's who I am," people say. But frequently, that self was created as a protective mechanism. Perhaps you learned to stay small in order to escape criticism. Perhaps you became hyper-independent because requesting help was punished. Perhaps you're constantly occupied because rest is not safe. These are not set characteristics. They're reactions to earlier surroundings, and they can be forgotten. When you shift the viewpoint that formed them, you naturally begin performing in manners that align with your reality and not your trauma. One of the most freeing transitions you can experience is the awareness that existence is not a strict framework that you need to endure. It's a reflective mirror you get to design. The instant you choose to anticipate favor, alignment, and support, your perception begins to scan for evidence of them. And since perception focuses attention, and attention focuses energy, and energy focuses experience, your external world gradually begins to reflect your new anticipation. What was once random now feels deliberate. What was once chaotic now begins to organize around your vision. You weren't born with a cracked lens. You were born with curiosity, with clarity, and with openness. The fog appeared later from things you didn't select but learned to endure. But now you're no longer enduring. You're choosing, and that makes all the difference. You get to determine how the rest of the story unfolds. You get to rewrite the script so that life begins to appear in ways consistent with your new way of viewing things. Not because the world magically improved, but because you did. You changed the lens, you modified the signal, you rewrote the script, and now everything starts to change. Chapter 2. All is energy, including your thoughts. There is a higher level of reality that tends to go unseen, not because it is being kept secret, but because we have not been conditioned to see it. Underneath the surface of everything, everyone, events, situations, there is movement, vibration, and flow. All that you can see, touch, or feel is energy in another form. That includes you. Your thoughts, feelings, beliefs, and expectations all have energy, and as with any energy, they radiate a frequency. This frequency is not mystical or abstractions. It is quantifiable in brain waves, in heart rates, in bodily chemistry. Your perception, powered by your inner energy, is continually creating the signal you transmit, and life, in its boundless sensitivity, reacts accordingly. The issue is that people generally do not know they are sending anything at all. They think their inner world is their own, closed off from the outside. But in fact, you are always communicating with the world around you, not only through what you say or do, but through your state. When you consistently think a thought, that thought becomes a belief. When that belief is infused with emotion, particularly intense emotions such as fear, hope, excitement, or terror, it leaves a vibrational imprint which tints your perception and shapes your reality. That is why two individuals can enter the same room and have utterly different experiences. One perceives opportunity, the other perceives threat. One feels energized, the other feels exhausted. Their energy is heard before their words are. We tend to believe our thoughts are mere responses to what is occurring, but in reality, they're potent creators. They don't just read reality, they warp it. You are not just preparing yourself when you approach a situation in anticipation of something going awry. You're helping build tension that impacts the way you act, the way others react to you, and ultimately the way the outcome goes. Conversely, when you go into something with peaceful confidence and a hope things will work out, you emanate stability, and that stability changes the atmosphere. This is not pretending everything is okay. It's about realizing that your internal signal determines your external experience a good deal more than you've learned. Your perception works like a tuner on a radio dial. Whatever you tune to, you receive more clearly. When your inner dial is turned on to fear, you tune in to signals of danger all around. When it's tuned on to lack, all you can see are pieces missing, issues, and what everyone else has that you don't. But when you tune into abundance, you begin to see potential. When you tune into peace, you begin to feel order even in moments of seeming chaos. The dial doesn't change the world. It changes what you can see and take in from it. And because you take action on what you sense, your actions begin to back up the very frequency you've tuned into. Energy attracts energy. This is not something solely spiritual. It's reflected in nature, in physics, in the brain. Like attracts like. Patterns support patterns. When you're constantly creating energy of openness, gratitude, and trust, you're more attuned to events, people, and ideas that are like-minded. And just like a musician tunes his instrument before going on stage, you have to tune your perception before entering the world. The practice is subtle, but the effect is strong. You don't need to push things to happen when your frequency is aligned. You become attractive to what resonates to that frequency, and you start to experience more ease, synchronicity, and flow. That's why the perception shift is not a surface change, it is an energetic realignment. You are not attempting to cover up a broken wall. You are altering the entire premise the wall was constructed upon. Through selecting new thoughts, letting go of old patterns, and grounding in higher emotions, you increase your frequency. You align what you notice, how you frame events, and how the world interacts with you. This is how creation is born out of perception, not by commanding every detail, but by getting into a state that draws in what once seemed unattainable to you. It is easy to imagine energy as something otherworldly or remote, but it's going on all the time in and around you. You sense it when you enter a room and pick up tension before anyone says a word. You feel it when another person's happiness raises your spirits without them uttering a word. You've sensed it when you chose to do something for no logical reason and then discovered that intuition kept you from something that's energy in action. It's frequency-informed perception. And once you become conscious of it, you can begin to use it on purpose instead of unconsciously. You get to choose in each moment what energy you bring. You can nourish fear, or you can nourish faith. You can live in what's lacking, or you can live in alignment with what's possible. You can replay old hurts, or you can broadcast a new frequency that shows you what you are becoming. It's not about denying struggle or even making everything look perfect. It's about deciding which signal you amplify. Because what you amplify, you attract, and what you attract, you experience. That's the way the loop of energy and perception functions. It begins inside of you and radiates outward. You are energy, your thoughts are energy. And when you learn to live with that knowledge, you no longer feel powerless. You learn to see that you are not merely reacting to life, you are dancing with it. You offer a rhythm, life responds with an echo back to you. Alter the rhythm, and the dance is altered. That is your strength. That is your duty. And that is where your new consciousness starts to grow. Chapter 3. Turn the filter over. From the time you get up in the morning till the time you drift off to sleep at night, your brain is sorting through reality. With billions of bits of data always in front of you, your mind simply cannot sort through it all. So it uses your internal filter. An apparatus conditioned by your beliefs, prior experiences, and emotional patterns to determine what to pay attention to. This filter informs you what is important and what is not. It informs you who you are, what you can and cannot do, and how the world is. But the most important thing to realize is this. The filter is not objective. It's not providing you with an accurate representation of reality. It's giving you a view of life that aligns with your present outlook. And if your outlook has been influenced by fear, failure, or frustration, then the filter will keep on serving up more of the same. This is why two individuals may be in the same situation and have totally different interpretations. One interprets a problem, the other a possibility. One interprets a dead end, the other a detour to something greater. The variance isn't in the event, it's in the filter. Your filter determines what you pay attention to, what you magnify, and what you disregard. If your filter is set to lack, you'll miss abundance. If your filter is geared towards betrayal, you'll miss loyalty. If your filter is programmed to dread disappointment, you'll sabotage excitement before it has a chance to develop. Most individuals live life responding to the world without ever wondering about the filter with which they see it. But filters are adjustable. They are not set in stone. They are pliable, and they refresh with your awareness and intention. The journey starts by observing the default settings. What narrative does your mind default to when something unexpected occurs? Do you automatically gear up for something to go awry? Do you prepare to lose, to be criticized, or rejected? Or do you stop, take a breath, and remind yourself that this moment may contain something positive? The more aware you are of your default response, the more authority you have to break the pattern and switch the filter. Flipping the filter is simply consciously picking a new lens through which to view your experiences. It doesn't involve pretending that all is okay when it's not. It involves opting to see beyond, to allow for the possibility of a larger order in operation even when events seem jumbled. Once you've changed your filter, you start asking better questions. You stop asking, why is this happening to me? You wonder, how is this making me ready? Rather than proclaiming this is a disaster, you find yourself wondering, what is this clearing for? These are not tricks of the mind. They are tools of perception that retrain your mind to perceive meaning where it once only perceived mess. Your brain is very suggestible, and it responds to repetition and feeling. If you rehearse thoughts of failure, shame, or fear with emotional intensity, your brain constructs more robust neural pathways to accommodate those beliefs. But if you start to feed your mind with high thoughts, possibility beliefs, resilience, and abundance consistently, while linking them to authentic emotion, you start to program a new default. The filter begins to change gradually at first and then consistently. You start seeing opportunities where you used to see only challenges. You begin to read delays not as penalties, but as God's timing. You know that life is not after you. Life is cooperating with you, pushing you toward the best version of you that you have yet to become. There's a reason some people appear to have more flow, more blessing, and more momentum. It's not chance, and it's not necessarily outside benefit. A lot of times, it's internal alignment. They've conditioned themselves to anticipate the best even after a fall. They've taught their filter to look for the next harmonious step, rather than the next perceived catastrophe. This isn't to say they don't encounter challenges. It's to say they don't allow those challenges to dictate the story. They reverse the filter, and in doing so, they redefine what is possible. You are the only one who can change your lens. Nobody else can change it for you. But once you start, you'll see how rapidly reality begins to mirror the new signal. It could start with little things, reduced stress in interactions, clearer decisions, a little but significant coincidence that confirms your path. Such moments are not coincidental. They are the outcomes of a filter that is starting to move into a higher vision. And the more you keep flipping the filter from fear to faith, from doubt to trust, from limitation to possibility, the more you will start to feel a version of life that is more cooperative, more intuitive, and more in harmony with who you truly are. Perception is not a passive activity. It is participatory. You are not simply receiving life, you're interpreting it, creating it, and adding to it with each thought, each belief, each decision. When you take back that power, you no longer wait for life to change. You begin to become the change. And as your world inside changes, the world outside changes in ways both predictable and magical. The filter turns, and suddenly, everything appears different, not because the world altered, but because you at last altered the lens through which you look. Chapter 4. From Control to Creation. Control is an acquired survival mechanism. Most everyone at some point assumes that only by using force, exactness, or constant management can they prevent life from unraveling. Control is a feeling of safety. It sounds responsible. It creates the illusion that by organizing every last detail or protecting ourselves against every potential danger, we can avoid disappointment. But control, as appealing as it may seem on the surface, is motivated by fear. It's the idea that things will go wrong if we don't go into fear. It's assuming the worst and trying to direct life from a place of resistance instead of trust. But ironically, the harder we attempt to control, the more we stiffen, and the more life resists. We start confusing effort with progress and tussle with growth, and we forget that creation works best where there is space. There is a clear line between control and co-creation. Control seeks to dictate outcomes. Co-creation is the skill of collaborating with life, not against it. It understands that you are not here to control your world. You are here to engage with it, react to it, and create from a place of harmony. In co-creation, you establish solid intentions, take significant action, and remain receptive to how and when it manifests. You believe that a higher intelligence is working here, one that understands timing, one that notices patterns you don't, one that rearranges situations not to thwart you, but to assist your highest course. Those who exist in a place of control are usually drained, frustrated, and worried. They push and push, but it feels like they're getting nowhere. They plan and plan, but the plans fall apart. They attempt to keep everything in place and still feel like something is getting away from them. This is not failure. It's feedback. It's life attempting to rechannel their energy away from micromanaging and toward collaboration. Control shuts down intuition. It hushes the signals that might produce breakthroughs. It has you mired in a cycle of doing more, working harder, and still not feeling like it's enough. Because control is powered by scarcity, the idea that if you don't clamp down tightly, everything will get away from you. Co-creation, on the other hand, is driven by abundance. It does not imply sitting back and doing nothing. It implies doing your job with commitment and clarity and trusting life to do the same in return. It implies being clear-headed without being desperate. It implies taking steps even if the way isn't revealed in full because you know that clarity often comes through action, not prior to it. Co-creation is a dance. You step forward, and life meets you there. You pay attention, and life responds. You align your inner self, and the outer world starts to reflect that alignment in surprising and often miraculous ways. The shift from control to co-creation is a radical perceptual shift. It requires you to look at life not as something to be overcome, but as something you are in relationship with. Each obstacle is a message. Each delay is an invitation to slow down and think about it. Each no is a redirection, not a rejection. This is the mindset that liberates you from the debilitating work of trying to predict and control everything. It enables you to navigate life more ease, more presence, and more power. Not because you are controlling the world around you, but because you're finally flowing in harmony with it. The ego tends to fight this transition. It needs certainty. It needs guarantees. It wants to know precisely what's going to occur and when. But the deeper reality is that many of life's most profound moments show up unscripted. They show up not by force, but by flow. When you let go of the tight grip of control, you provide room for magic. You allow room for intuition to emerge, for synchronicity to appear, for your foot to be led by something greater than reason alone. And in that room, you don't see chaos, you see clarity. You see that co-creation doesn't mean less power, it means more. Because now rather than pushing with effort, you're swimming with the current. And the current always has more potential than effort ever could. This has nothing to do with abandoning goals or decreasing standards. It's about changing your modus operandi. You still make intentions. You still take strong action, but you no longer insist on things manifesting in one particular way. You remain adaptable. You remain attuned. You are more interested in alignment than in control, and that changes everything. Your energy lifts. Your mind clarifies, your body unwinds. And as you step into that receptive space, you begin to see how much more support is present for you than you ever knew. Resources appear, people manifest, openings occur. Everything begins to move, not because you pushed it, but because you opened it up. Giving up control isn't giving up direction. It's giving space for wiser directions to become apparent. It's respecting your own beat, understanding that when your energy is in harmony, the world responds. It means recalling that you are not here to do this on your own. You are here to collaborate with the unseen wisdom that understands your journey even when you don't. You were never intended to bear it all. You were intended to co-create. And when you recall that, you cease pushing, you cease running, and you start to let go. And in that permission, everything starts to flow, not from pressure, but from power. Chapter 5. The power of this is working for me. It is simple to be at peace when all things are going your way, when doors open naturally, when relationships thrive, when money comes in and your plans come together without a hitch, gratitude comes naturally. Confidence feels warranted. You resonate with life, and your own perception confirms that everything is going to be okay. But what happens during those times when nothing makes sense? What occurs when the call doesn't arrive, the chance fails, the relationship crashes, or life gives you an outcome you didn't anticipate or desire? That's when your perception is really challenged. That's when the transition from fear to trust becomes more than a concept. It becomes a daily practice, one that grows stronger the more you anchor it in a powerful belief. No matter what it looks like on the surface, this is happening for me. At first, that idea might feel strange or even unreasonable. How could a heartbreak, a job loss, illness, or financial struggle possibly serve your growth? It's a fair question, but it's also one rooted in surface-level perception, not deeper understanding. Beneath the discomfort often lies direction, transformation, or clarity, if you're willing to look beyond the immediate pain. Saying this is occurring for me isn't about ignoring the pain, frustration, or confusion of a difficult moment. It's not a denial of reality, it's a deeper acknowledgement of it. It's the choice to believe that within what feels like chaos or disappointment, there is something calling you to grow, release, or rise. It's the understanding that life isn't random and you're not being punished, you're being refined, redirected, or gently awakened to something greater that you may not yet recognize. This isn't blind positivity, it's conscious awareness. It is about being grounded in a higher intelligence. You start to have faith that life is not working against you and that there is a higher logic in motion than you are aware of. Sometimes rejection is protection. Sometimes failure is redirection. Sometimes the very thing that breaks is the thing that must break in order to make room for something more true, more aligned, more eternal. You will not always notice it at the time. But after a while, looking back on those times from a distance and with hindsight, patterns will emerge. You realize how the pieces fit together. You realize how what you thought was the end was really just a necessary start. This change of mind does not make you passive. It does not imply that you cease to set goals, take action, or make adjustments. It implies that you cease resisting what is. You cease fighting the present moment and begin questioning what it may be presenting. When you assert that something is occurring for you, you shift to a different line of inquiry. You begin to go from why me to what now. You start to respond rather than react. You start to question how you might learn from the experience rather than how you might get out of it. That shift in attitude changes your energy, and that change in energy changes what follows. Some of the most lasting changes masquerade as disappointment. Some of the most life-altering opportunities start as disruption. The position you didn't land may compel you to begin the business you were destined to create. The individual who departed may allow space for the partnership you actually require. The diversion you were compelled to take may lead you to the very thing that awakens your heart. These connections do not always become clear at first, but when you hold in place the assumption that life is unfolding for you, you start seeking out the secret gift, and while you seek, you start to find it. The assumption that life is for you brings resilience. It empowers you to stand within not knowing without falling apart. It enables you to confront difficulties with curiosity rather than fear. It fortifies your ability to embrace both the pain of not knowing and the trust that understanding will arrive. You no longer need instant answers. You no longer insist on certainty. You come to realize that certain answers come only from experience, and certain lessons only become apparent in hindsight. That acceptance brings peace, and out of peace, you make more intelligent decisions. Out of peace, you tap into your creativity, your intuition, your resourcefulness. This change also alters the way you view other individuals. When life is going for you, you cease to view others as adversaries or obstructions. You understand that even those who hurt and disappoint you are perhaps working in your development. They can be reflecting something inside of you that is seeking to be released or healed. That doesn't mean that you tolerate bad behavior. It means that you glean wisdom from every interaction. You start moving through the world with less bitterness and more discrimination. You keep your peace not by avoidance, but by wisdom. Finally, the saying "this is happening to me" is a statement of empowerment. It is choosing to own your experience without being a victim. It is taking back your narrative from things that are outside of your control. When you live by this mantra, you are a different type of person. You become a person who is able to live with not knowing, who is able to navigate with adversity, who is able to make every page turn, however unforeseen, a part of a greater, improved story. That's not naive. That's mastery. That's the power of perception in full swing, and it's yours the moment you decide to trust the process even when the process doesn't yet make sense. Chapter 6. Your inner story is the outer script. There is a narrative running in your head, usually so quietly that you don't even remember it's there. You bring it with you into all of your conversations, every decision, every obstacle. It is more than just a collection of thoughts or memories. It is your internal story, the script that informs you who you are, how much you're worth, what you can do, and what you can expect from life. More people than you might think have no idea how much power this internal narrative holds. They think it's just the way things are, when in fact, it's just a perception pattern. And until you look at that story and challenge whether or not it's still true or helpful, it will keep conditioning your outside reality without your knowing permission. The inner story is created early on, well before you have the power of choice in your beliefs. You learn them from your surroundings. One instance of rejection during childhood can become a long-term perception of worthlessness. One cruel remark from a person you looked up to could be the basis of your self-doubt. Perhaps you see money as a perpetual source of anxiety, and you take with you the message that wealth is hard or perilous. These experiences are repeated, practiced, and cemented until they are the narrative you unconsciously narrate to yourself without even uttering a word. You act upon it. You make decisions through it. You seek out experiences that align with it unwittingly because your mind desires consistency over truth. That's the weird strength of a belief. It doesn't have to be true. It just has to feel normal. And once something is normal, your brain starts censoring out anything that disagrees with it. If your personal story is that people always leave, you'll see every indication that reinforces that belief and overlook indications of commitment and affection. If your narrative states, "I never get the break," you'll lose the subtle opportunities that call for your involvement. You will say to yourself, "See." It always occurs this way without becoming aware that the script you're living by has been written from an older version of you, a version in need of a rewrite. Shifting your perspective starts with recognizing the story that you've been living. This doesn't involve blame or shame, it takes consciousness. What do you always tell yourself when things fall apart? What story do you tell about your habits? What assumptions are you making about what's possible for you? You're not trying to judge yourself, but instead, to notice with curiosity. Because once you notice the story, you can begin to rewrite it. You can cut it off midstream. You can reply with a different thought. You can tell yourself that the old story was constructed for survival, not for success. And survival scripts will often have boundaries that don't fit anymore the person you are becoming. There is no magic equation to rewrite your story. It occurs in small, consistent choices. It starts by sowing seeds of a new self and confirming them with concerted behavior. Rather than affirming, "I always sabotage things," you begin asserting, "I'm learning to manage things more clarity." Rather than telling yourself, "I can't trust others," you begin asserting, "I'm learning to attract and accept trustworthy relationships." You start saying, "I'm learning to attract and receive trustworthy connection." These aren't lies. They're declarations of transition. You're not pretending to be someone you're not. You're choosing to become someone your old story didn't account for. That is the core of perception work. It is not about leaving your reality behind. It's about remaking it from the inside out. Words count in doing so. The terms you address yourself with when you speak to yourself reinforce the old narrative or create a new one. When you use words such as "I always," "I never," or "that's just how I am," you lock identity into habit. But when you create with words that are about growth, flexibility, and curiosity, you create space for change. You start to think about yourself as a dynamic system, rather than a fixed personality. And by doing so, you allow yourself to change. That permission will often be enough to initiate a new way of seeing. What is so deep about this change is that it not only alters how you perceive yourself, but also how others perceive you. Others react to energy before they react to words. When your inner narrative is one of value, possibility, and confidence, it shines through in your posture, your voice, your choices. You no longer have to look for other people's approval because you're not running a script that second-guesses your value. You're no longer scared to attempt because you don't anticipate failure as your default. And when you do fail, you don't fall apart. You revise the narrative. You study, and you move forward. That's mastery. That's resilience, and it begins with perception. Your life is always reflecting your belief system. And if your life feels stuck, small, or crazy, look within before you look without. What story are you living by? What identity are you protecting? What story are you telling that no longer serves you? And what new story might you start to tell, one that respects your past but isn't bound by it? When you tell it to yourself the truth, you will find the story was never concrete. It was merely in rehearsal. And the instant you alter the script, the world begins to change with you, not because everything beyond you changed in one night, but because your perspective changed, and perception always dictates the plot. Chapter 7. Gratitude as a frequency shifter. There is a reason that those who practice gratitude look lighter, more magnetic, more receptive to life. It is not because they are Pollyannas, ignoring problems, and immune to pain. It is because they have conditioned themselves to perceive through a different lens, to sense beauty even in the midst of struggle, and to acknowledge the presence of something good before it becomes apparent. Gratitude is usually confused with a shallow courtesy or a mushy emotional response to good things. But gratitude really is a frequency, a conscious alignment of your internal state with the energy of abundance, and as with any frequency, it draws more of what is similar. Most people only wait to feel grateful until something good enough comes along. They keep their gratitude hostage to terms, believing that life must become better first before they can feel thankful. But this belief turns creation around. It puts power into the hands of circumstance instead of perception. The fact is, gratitude is not a response. It's a generator. It's a positive signal that says to life, I see what's working, and I'm open to receiving more. When you start living from that space, not in denial of challenge, but in full awareness of potential, you change your whole emotional and energetic state. And when your energy changes, so does your experience. Gratitude heightens your awareness by concentrating your mind on what is here, rather than what is lacking. It ends the pattern of scanning for danger, losses, or unrealized desires and directs your attention to what is here, now, in your favor. In a world madly focused on pursuing what's next, this presence is transformative. When you can actually feel thankful for what you already possess, your breath, your body, your lessons, your strength, you start radiating the vibration of sufficiency. It doesn't imply that you don't want more. It implies that you are no longer stuck in the vibration of lack. And abundance will never flow to those who think they are empty. It flows to those who know they are already full, even as they stretch toward more. It's simple to be thankful when everything is going well, when objectives are accomplished, and when all the pieces fall into place, but the real magic occurs when you can tap into gratitude in the in-between moments, in the waiting, in not knowing, in the struggle that has not yet resolved. This is where gratitude is a choice. During these times, gratitude is an act of bravery, an indicator of faith, a statement that you are opting to perceive life as kind even when it isn't apparent. That choice lifts you up. It raises your emotional floor. It instills an inner strength that cannot be rattled so easily, because when your gratitude is no longer conditional, your joy is no longer delicate. Gratitude is also a natural amplifier. Whatever you pay attention to with appreciation grows. If you pay attention to what's working, you will start to see more of it. If you pay attention to the traits you appreciate in another person, those traits become apparent. If you pay attention to what's happening for you, you'll find evidence where others are seeing only disorder. This is not delusion. This is alignment. You're aligning your awareness with the energy of favor, and by doing so, you're impacting how life greets you. It doesn't guarantee that you won't encounter challenge, but it guarantees that you'll encounter it from a greater space. And when your baseline energy is higher, solutions manifest quicker, connections come more effortlessly, and clarity comes with less labor. There is a deep wisdom in thankfulness. It silences the clamor of comparison and competition. It mollifies the need to prove or propel. It enables you to be whole in the moment and still make progress with vision and drive. This is not complacency, it's creative force born of presence. From here, you act not to repair what is in pieces, but to grow what is already strong. That nuanced difference in intention shifts the quality of your work, your relationships, and your result. People sense the difference. Life senses the difference. You become a force of momentum instead of tension, of clarity instead of confusion. To make gratitude a way of being rather than a fleeting feeling, it must become a practice, not a forced ritual or hollow list making, but a sincere engagement with what is real. Start by noticing one thing each day that supports you. It could be a quiet moment, a kind word, a small solution to a lingering problem. Let that noticing be enough. Let it earth you. Gradually, this humble practice develops a new habit of perception. Your brain, constantly rewiring due to repetition and emotional charge, becomes accustomed to defaulting to appreciation rather than complaint. And as this new wiring becomes established, the vibrancy of your entire life starts to increase. Gratitude will not make life ideal, but it will make your perception more potent. It will not remove all challenge, but it will show you strength and aid you didn't know you already had. It is a reminder in each moment that you are never as far from peace as it appears. Because peace is not the lack of problems, it is the presence of perspective, and gratitude is the fastest way to access that presence. When you keep opting for it again and again, not as a performance, but as a vision, you start observing the flow that has been there all along. You will no longer wait for something outside yourself to change your mood. You become the change. And from that space, everything will start meeting you differently. Chapter 8. Anchor into abundance every day. Living from an abundance mindset is not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice, a cultivated awareness, and a moment-by-moment dedication to living in accordance with a truth higher than fear, higher than lack, and higher than doubt. You are immersed in abundance more times than you've been conditioned to notice. But if your focus has been conditioned to see what's lacking, that abundance can go unnoticed. In order to move from scarcity to sufficiency, you must ground yourself in the energy of abundance each and every day, not only when life is working, but particularly when doubt starts to creep in. This isn't about faking life is great, it is about choosing which glasses will hold your focus and ultimately define your experience. Abundance is not merely a bank account balance, a job description, or the possessions you have. It is a state of being. It is a way of interpreting life that assumes there is always more on the way, more opportunities, more love, more clarity, more connection. Scarcity whispers that you're running out of time, that you've missed your chance, that you're falling behind. Abundance gently reminds you that your journey is unfolding, that your timing is your own, and that what is yours cannot be taken away from you. When you ground yourself in this mindset, you quit reacting out of panic and begin responding out of power. You quit pursuing what you believe you lack and begin to align with what already wants to meet you. Anchoring in abundance every day involves building mini rituals and habits that reboot your mindset. They are not motivational rituals, they are perceptual adjustments. Each morning that you awaken, you have a choice to lean into lack or lean into trust. One way creates pressure, the other creates flow. One constricts your energy, the other expands it. As you begin your day with intention, using gratitude, meditation, movement, or even a few minutes of stillness, you start to become the owner of your internal landscape. And when you dictate the energy you bring, you get to dictate the energy you get. Most of us start our day in response. We grab our phones, scroll through other folks' lives, soak in headlines meant to create fear and inadvertently anchor ourselves into worry before taking a mindful breath. From there, it is very hard to see the abundance that already exists. The mind gets stuck on what is not right, what is lacking, or what is broken. But when you start your day by anchoring into what is already working, what is already supportive, available, and unfolding, you condition your perception to see more of it during the day. This is not spiritual fluff. It is neurological reality. Your brain's reticular activating system screens information in accordance with what you pay attention to. And if you pay attention to abundance, you begin to see it more and more. Anchoring into abundance is not just about what you do in the morning, it's about how you tune in with yourself all day long. When stress escalates, when doubt enters the room, when plans go awry, you can take a pause, breathe, and ask a better question. Rather than dwelling on what's going wrong, ask what's attempting to align. Rather than getting caught up in frustration, remember that something greater may be emerging out of sight. This is not naivety, it is mastery. It's the act of staying centered in the midst of change, and the more you make that choice, the more it expands. It also serves to be surrounded by reminders. The conversations you have, the media you take in, the language you use with yourself, all of it either reinforces abundance or scarcity. If you're bombarded on a regular basis with fear-driven conversation, comparison, or pessimism, your mindset will instinctively contract. But when you design your world on purpose, selecting voices and influences that remind you of your power, your vision, and your value, you are creating rich soil for abundance to thrive. You may not always be able to control your situation, but you can control the inner environment. That is where freedom resides. Being anchored into abundance is also about celebrating evidence of it in whatever form is available. A compliment, a sudden opportunity, an act of kindness, a moment of peace. These are all indicators of alignment. When you see them, you gain momentum. When you miss them, you reconfirm that everything is not working. Every time you say, "This is a sign that things are in motion," you reinforce the idea that life is going your way. And the more that perception is reinforced, the more your behavior changes. You're more open, more available, more likely to take a risk. You start to lead from trust rather than fear, and that difference alters your results. It's not about being high energy all the time or that you never feel discouraged. It's about having a secure place to come back to. When you ground into abundance every day, you set up a secure emotional and mental home base. You provide yourself with a place to stand when the world seems crazy. And from that solid ground, you can handle anything, not because the world gets simpler, but because you get stronger, more peaceful, and more present. The world outside you might still test you, but your inner compass is fixed. Abundance is not merely something to attract. It is something to practice, and the practice starts inside. It starts in the still moments, the tiny decisions, the subtle adjustments of focus. It starts when you make the choice that your energy is yours to wield, and your perception is your greatest strength. When you settle into that recognition on a regular basis, life greets you with more of what mirrors it. The abundance never went away. It was simply waiting for your perception to attune and take it in. Chapter 9. Welcome contrast, invite growth. Contrast is part of the fabric of life. It arrives in the guise of discomfort, interruption, disappointment, or even conflict. It tends to arrive when you are least expecting it, when everything appears to be going along nicely, or just when you are starting to gain traction. People generally perceive contrast as a challenge, something that needs to be resolved, skirted, or eliminated as soon as possible. But contrast is not here to get in your way. It is here to ignite you. And when you change your perspective on contrast, you start to view it not as opposition, but as invitation, not as a message that things are going awry, but as an indicator that something new is trying to come forth in and through you. Each time that you're experiencing resistance, it's an indicator that you've arrived at the boundary of who you're at, what you're thinking, or what you can do. It's life pushing you ahead, inviting you to stretch, grow, or let go of something that no longer supports where you're headed. But rather than accepting the push, most people pull back. They read the pain as failure or take the disruption personally, like life's judging them. That's a common reaction, particularly if you've been conditioned to think that ease is success and hardship is evidence you're doing it wrong. But the deeper reality is that growth is frequently masked as friction. What you perceive as a breakdown is typically the start of a breakthrough. Consider contrast to be a mirror. It reflects where your inner world and external reality are in dissonance. When you find yourself faced with circumstances that seem confining, draining, or out of alignment, they are usually pointing the way to where your beliefs, expectations, or decisions must change. If you are always in battles with others, the contrast is likely indicating boundaries, communication, or self-esteem. If you continue running into roadblocks in one area of your life, the contrast is likely challenging you to get at it differently, to let go of control, or to elevate how you perceive yourself. In each instance, contrast is intelligent. The issue is whether you will fight it or take it in. Opening up to contrast is not about loving pain or pursuing discomfort. It is about quitting running from it. You begin to look under the surface. You start to trust that you are not being derailed by life, but are instead being presented with a deeper realization of where you are, who you are becoming, and what is still calling for your attention. This view shifts how you navigate difficulty. Rather than falling into self-doubt or frustration, you lean in with curiosity. You wonder, what is this here to teach me, or what strength is being called out of me right now? Those questions shift your energy, and when your energy shifts, your experience starts to shift with it. Every person who has grown beyond their limitations has walked through contrast. It is the universal teacher. It sharpens your clarity, it makes your commitment deeper. It reveals your unconscious habits and invites you to answer differently. You do not develop out of perfection. You develop out of contrast. The space between where you're at and where you want to be is not a penalty, it's where the magic happens. And when you begin to live in that space rather than avoiding it, you begin to tap into reservoirs of resilience and wisdom that you didn't know you possessed. Contrast also increases desire. When you see what you don't want, it makes you more clear about what you do want. A bad job makes you hunger for good work. A poisonous relationship teaches you the importance of respect and emotional safety. A season of lack shows you just how much you cherish security and flow. This way, contrast is innovative. Contrast sparks a vision in you that may have remained stagnant without the tension of discontent. Without contrast, you could never have been challenged to dream bigger, ask for more, or stretch to meet the version of yourself that can receive more. In order to collaborate with contrast rather than resisting it, you need to move from judgment to observation. Rather than saying something is bad or wrong, notice what it is teaching you. Let it teach you. Let it hone you. Let it make you more deliberate, more mindful, more present in what really matters. If you do this regularly, you start to recognize contrast as a routine, even a required, part of your growth. You no longer are bothered by struggle. You start utilizing it. You no longer dread the next challenge. You start embracing the possibility it presents. This attitude doesn't make you passive. It makes you strong. You are no longer responding emotionally to every interruption. You are reacting with purpose and clarity. You are no longer basing your self-worth on how smooth or out of control your life is at any given time. You know that progress always involves some friction, and every level of consciousness comes with a moment of contrast first. And since you have faith in the process, you get through the discomfort quicker. You recover more quickly. You absorb the lesson rather than replay the pattern. When you embrace contrast, you are unstoppable. You stop waiting for ideal circumstances and begin to create from wherever you are. You begin to select perception over panic. You begin to look at life through the perspective of development, not merely satisfaction, and that makes all the difference. The same experience that once derailed you now grounds you. The same situation that previously brought about fear now invokes strength. That is what it is to change your perspective. It is not the termination of challenge. It is the termination of your resistance to the expansion it leads. Contrast does not indicate that you are in error. It indicates that you are undergoing the process of aligning more profoundly with that which you've requested. And when you release from resisting that alignment, life responds with clarity, flow, and favor. Chapter 10. Don't score too early. There is a human tendency to judge progress too soon. When the results don't materialize immediately, when the outcomes don't align effort immediately, the mind starts panicking. It jumps to conclusions, announcing nothing works, all effort is futile, failure is certain. This is a result of a culture of instant gratification, in which waiting is synonymous with weakness and in which visible accomplishment needs to show up as rapidly as it is hoped for. But change works on your optimal schedule. Life is linear, not on cue. And when you take score too early, you usually leave something just in time for it to begin functioning. The fact is, most growth occurs in unseen ways before it can be measured. A seed doesn't sprout overnight. Muscles strengthen through micro-movements before you can see a change. Emotional healing starts with quiet shifts before your situation reflects your improvement. There is always more occurring below the surface than you are aware of. Just because it can't be seen yet doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just because you haven't yet reached destination does not mean you're lost. The tendency to always measure and demonstrate that things are moving can potentially get in the way of the process itself. It keeps you in the place of outcome instead of alignment, and that focus can create unwarranted frustration. Taking score too soon is an insecurity habit. It's a question of, am I doing this correctly? Is it all worth it? Rather than having faith that your effort, your energy, and your intention already are propelling you forward. It shows a fear that life's not going to deliver, that perhaps the change you're looking for is not coming. But that fear, when played, closes the channel. It makes you question the very direction you're supposed to be heading. It welcomes indecision, sabotaging, and inconsistency. A once clear course now becomes filled with second-guessing. And when you're lost in that cloud, even the correct action can feel incorrect. There is another way to live, one that doesn't need constant approval from outcomes. It starts with accepting that your work is to line up, to take action, and to have faith. Life's work is to respond in its time, in its manner. When you let go of the urgent need to gauge progress step by step, you provide room for momentum to develop. You give room for gestation, for timing, for alignment to become established before outcomes bear themselves. You cease to dig up the seed daily to check if it is growing, and you water, care for, and allow it to do what it is meant to. Believing is not a matter of thinking that they are going to happen. It is the practice of staying grounded and faithful when you can't see that they are. This is where your attitude is your best weapon. If you perceive a delay as failure, you'll contract. If you perceive it as part of the process, you'll expand. If you score too early, you'll drop out too early. But if you trust the timing of your life, you'll cultivate the patience it takes to endure it, and that patience isn't passive. It's an active, earthy energy that helps you keep showing up, keep creating, keep moving when the outside hasn't yet caught up with the inside. Every meaningful shift in life has a gestation period, whether it's building a business, healing your body, reshaping your mindset, or cultivating a new relationship with money. Time is always part of the equation, but time alone doesn't create change. Consistency does, and consistency only turns into something sustainable when you will no longer worry about seeing it right away. You're not here to pursue outcomes. You're here to become the kind of individual who lives in accordance with what you want. And when you live that version of yourself through action, thought, energy, and expectation, the outcomes become inescapable. Scoring too early also shows you don't understand what success really is. Success isn't the destination. It's the journey of becoming more conscious, more centered, more on purpose. It's a matter of developing the ability to receive and contain what you've requested. If it doesn't come yet, that doesn't mean you failed. Perhaps it simply means you're still becoming the you who is capable of receiving it completely. And if you believe that, then you no longer need to get verification from the outside world every step of the way. You no longer gauge your value based on fleeting results. You begin to construct from the inside out. The most powerful breakthroughs usually occur after a significant period of quiet, where nothing appears to be changing but everything is silently setting up to. If you take inventory in the quiet, you might overlook the breakthrough. You might give up too soon, compromise your standards, or change direction unnecessarily. But if you persevere, if you keep your vision constant, you'll realize in the end that the silence was not empty. It was packed with unseen movement, alignment, and preparation. And when the shift comes, it won't be subtle. It will be unmistakable, but it will only be noticeable to the one who waited patiently and had the vision to continue believing. So quit checking the scoreboard every 5 minutes. Quit searching for evidence that you're close enough. Quit seeking signs that everything is coming together, and become the person who knows it is, no matter what's visible. Because the instant you quit taking score too soon is the instant you begin playing for the long game. And in the long term, those who hold on in faith always receive outcomes that are greater than they could have imagined. Chapter 11. Choose it's already working. There is a clear difference between hoping it will work and deciding it already does. Hope tends to wait idly by, observing and wondering, bound to external evidence to feel secure. Decision, however, is active, grounded, and based on trust. It doesn't depend on conditions to validate its position. It creates energy, and that energy determines outcomes. When you commit to something being working prior to the results, prior to the signs, prior to the applause, you shift into a completely different frequency. You are no longer attempting to manifest out of desperation or frustration. You are proceeding with confidence. That change in mindset is strong enough to alter the course of your entire life. To decide something already works is not to overlook challenges or delude yourself that all is easy. It is to select the goggles with which you view what is happening. It is to see the delay as not denial, but as divine timing. It is to feel resistance as not rejection, but as redirection. It means you cease asking for confirmation and begin providing it yourself. The instant you do this, you cease leaking energy. You cease flirting with doubt. Every time there's a moment of uncertainty, you begin to take on the energy of alignment, and that taking on sends an unmistakable message to life itself. Your perception generates feedback. When you vacillate, life vacillates. When you maintain a strong inner position that states, "I know this is going to work," life starts to align with that assurance. You draw in people, situations, and solutions that align with the confidence you are living. This is not magical thinking. It is energetic alignment. Others are attracted to confidence. Situations react to dedication. Means greet those who proceed with purpose. Those who appear to operate in flow are usually those who just made an inner choice way before the outer evidence came. They accepted the process. They quit negotiating out of fear. They concluded there is a hidden cost to indecision. It saps your momentum. It muddles your clarity. It makes even the simplest actions feel burdensome. As you're always zigzagging between doubt and belief, you lose momentum. You stall. You overanalyze. You second-guess what you do and water down your effect. But when you commit, your energy gets clean. You walk with intention. You move with faith, not because all things are certain, but because you understand that not making a decision is the true danger, not failure, not setbacks, not obstacles, but the stagnation of requiring everything to be in place before you move. Life does not demand you be perfect. Life demands you be committed. Making the decision it's already working also shifts how you come to it. You no longer have to manipulate or perform. You no longer work from scarcity or emergency. You have faith that your energy is doing half the work, and your action, when it comes from a place of clarity, is multiplied. It does not mean you never shift your strategy or hone your style. It means your underlying belief does not vacillate. It means you are grounded in your vision, not controlled by your situation. And from that place of being grounded, you have more energy, more endurance, and more intuitive connection to the next step. The fact is, most folks are one decision away from the momentum they've been seeking, not a decision on what to do, but a decision on how to view what they're doing. When you commit to the idea that it's working, you're no longer responding to every stumble as a catastrophe. You cease to give up on your vision every time the proof doesn't conform to your expectation. You remain consistent, and that consistency starts to snowball. Your world inside gets less messy. Your actions outside get more powerful. The space between intention and manifestation begins to close, not because the world suddenly shifts, but because you did. This choice also takes back your power. When you wait for others to tell you that you're doing the right thing, you become a slave to your situation. But when you say it's already working, you become the boss. You become the one who creates the experience rather than responding to the experience. That decision moves your nervous system out of survival mode. It quiets the internal criticism that you're out of time or about to miss your opportunity. You take deeper breaths. You walk more deliberately with greater intent. And, paradoxically, that peaceful presence speeds outcome far more than straining effort ever can. The most accomplished individuals you know have come to terms with the unknown. They don't work with complete knowledge or incessant reassurance. They just made a choice and then just kept returning for it. Their clarity became their attraction. Their consistency became their energy. You possess the same power, but it starts with a perceptual commitment, an unwavering decision that what you are creating, becoming, or healing is already underway, not because the signs say so, but because your faith does. You can wait for life to validate it, or you can decide it's already occurring. That choice will alter your energy. That energy will alter your behavior. That behavior will create your results. The power of perception is not only in seeing, but in choosing to see. And once you've made up your mind that things are going your way, they tend to start doing so as well. Not because the world overnight, but because you refused to wait any longer and began to walk as if it were true. And when you do that long enough, it transcends a belief. It becomes reality. Chapter 12. The Miracle of Mindful Momentum. Momentum is perhaps the most undervalued power in personal change. It contains a gentle power, a subtle cadence, and a compound influence that most people miss. Everyone dreams of the big discovery, the sudden turn, the overnight phenomenon. But the reality is, true change oftentimes starts not by a great leap, but by one choice and repeated sets of small aligned actions. When you start moving with purpose, even in the most subtle of movements, you tap into something larger than effort. You ignite momentum, and momentum once started has a way of taking you further than you can envision, not by force, but by flow. The catch is that most people wait for the feeling of being inspired before they act. They think motivation has to lead the way, that they have to feel ready, feel confident, or feel certain before they take action. But feeling follows perception. Action tends to create the feeling you're waiting for. Confidence is not a precursor to action. It is a byproduct of it. Clarity is not necessarily a precursor to the step. It typically arrives after. This is where mindful momentum becomes a revolutionary resource. It is the choice to keep going with presence, to take the next step with awareness, and to have faith that progress is occurring even when it's not loud or dramatic. Mindfulness is what keeps momentum pure. Without mindfulness, momentum becomes manic, fueled by fear, pressure, or the need to prove something. That kind of momentum drains you, distracts you, and ultimately burns you out. But mindful momentum is grounded. It is intentional. It is intention-driven, not pressure. You don't rush out of fear. You advance slowly because you're in sync. You do not need outside encouragement step by step. You have faith in the process, understanding that every aligned action has exponential value. Even when the outcome isn't imminent, you're sure you're creating something with depth, something durable. Perception becomes a critical part of this process. If you are convinced that small actions don't matter, you undermine momentum. If you discredit the little victories or lose sight of the small progress, you deprive yourself of the satisfaction and reinforcement that drive repetition. But when you change your focus to finding each step meaningful, each effort cumulative, you start feeling empowered, not drained. You see that one conversation, one journal page, one exercise, one act of courage, repeated day after day, can shift the whole course of your life. You no longer search for the single perfect move and begin respecting the discipline of showing up. Momentum is not only physical. It is emotional, mental, and energetic. When you begin to select peace over panic, gratitude over complaint or possibility over doubt, you create emotional momentum. When you start to shift your thoughts away from the things that could go wrong and onto what may be going right in your favor, you create mental momentum. When you maintain a steady frequency of trust, worthiness, and openness, you create energetic momentum. And when all three come together, your outer life starts reflecting that inner change in dramatic and often surprising ways. There will be days when momentum is invisible, days when the work feels so difficult and the progress so slow. These are the most critical days to remain the course. These are the moments that challenge your seeing, your commitment, and your trust in the unseen. Anyone will act if the road is open and the feedback immediate, but the masters of momentum know that the strongest movement oftentimes occurs in silence. The breakthrough would most likely be preceded by an extended period of unseen foundation building, and it is those who didn't require incessant proof in order to continue. Mindful momentum also involves permitting yourself to reset. You don't need to continue doing something one way simply because you began that way. Flexibility isn't a lack of discipline. It is evidence of presence. When you are in the moment, you stay attuned. You know when your energy changes, when your surroundings change, and when it's time to change how you're doing things. That responsiveness maintains momentum alive. Stubbornness based on fear destroys it. You don't have to push your way ahead. You must remain present, remain aware, and continue to select the next best aligned step. Momentum eventually takes over. What was once an effort becomes second nature. The things that used to feel unnatural become habitual. Your intuition comes in sync with your new persona. You don't need to convince yourself to do the work. It is who you are. That's when the magic happens. Not because something external to you changed, but because your consistency birthed ease. Your mindset transformed from effort to embodiment in the very same actions that previously had been hard now feel like home. This is the miracle of mindful momentum. It does not compel you to do more. It challenges you to do what matters in a consistent state of awareness. It challenges you to cease measuring your life by intensity and begin measuring it by integrity. It keeps reminding you that perception isn't a passing thought. It is a practice, reinforced each time you decide to trust over doubt, move over static, and be present over pressure. When you're living from that place, you become unstoppable, not because you're moving fast, but because you're moving in rhythm. And that rhythm becomes the heartbeat of your new life, one step, one breath, one attuned action at a time. Chapter 13. Let go in order to receive. Attachment is confused with commitment. The more we cling, the more serious we have to be, the more worthy we seem. That is what most people believe and are unaware of the fact that actually they are strangling their desires, rather than cultivating them. Detachment isn't disinterest. It isn't passivity or surrender. It is the art of loosening your emotional hold on the result so that what you desire has room to come in without being stifled by your need for control. Detachment lets the energy flow. It allows the process to happen naturally. It leaves space for timing, flow, and unexpected opportunities to find you in ways you could never have planned on your own. When you become fixated on how something needs to occur, when it needs to occur, or who it must come through, you limit your perception. You start to shut down everything that won't fit into your rigid plan. You ignore signs that things might be working in your favor in a different form. You overlook subtle possibilities because you're so concerned with what you've determined it has to appear as. Attachment makes your vision tunnel-like. Detachment broadens your perception. It enables you to see that the universe may present your want in a form even your imagination can't conceive, but only if you're willing to recognize it. Detachment is based on trust. It states, "I've done mine, and now I'm letting life do its." It's the willingness to have faith that once you've planted the seed, you don't have to dig it up and see how it's doing every hour. You water it, you put it in sunlight, and let nature do the rest. Most people don't do this because they get effort confused with control. They think the more mental energy they put into something, the quicker it will occur. But more often than not, that excess energy is not alignment, but anxiety. It's tension masquerading as productivity, and tension inhibits flow. When you are energetically desperate for something to occur, you generate resistance. That resistance holds up what you are attempting to bring in. The force of detachment is your ability to feel complete prior to the outcome manifesting. It's the internal knowledge that you are still whole even without the validation you desire. When you're at this place of self-trust, you are magnetic. People, ideas, and resources are attracted to that consistent energy. There is nothing sexier than someone who walks with quiet confidence, who moves forward without chasing, who moves from clarity not compulsion. Detachment doesn't equate to not caring. It means you release the clinging. It means you do the work, create the vision, and then step back with open hands and release the need to control the result. This is not a license to be passive. In fact, detachment creates more inspired action because you're no longer burdened with emotional storms. When you're detached, you can better hear your intuition. You sense the organic timing of when to act and when to rest. You no longer try to force timing and simply become more sensitive to what life is offering at this moment. Detachment brings you into the present, and present is where clarity resides. Out of presence, you decide in alignment, not fear. You're a yes to what feels right and a no to what doesn't without the fear of missing out or getting behind. Detachment also assists you in healing quicker when things do not turn out the way you had anticipated. Rather than getting caught up in disappointment or self-doubt, you recall that one shut door is not a sign that the road is closed. It merely indicates there is another pathway, possibly an even better one. You do not regard the outcome as individual failure. You view it as data. This attitude keeps you agile. It allows you to shift gears with elegance rather than folding into exasperation. When you are not attached, you are able to adjust. And when you are able to adjust, you keep moving. You keep your mind open to the next possibility, the next thought, the next stage that's already in progress. Detachment is a practice, not an instant decision. It's something you come back to over and over again, particularly when your ego would like to drive. It's the practice of telling yourself that you are not the single author of your life. You are a co-creator, and co-creation involves working with something more than your logic. It is asking you to have faith in the unseen, to respect sacred timing, and to allow your life to unfold without trying to manage every single detail. This is not a simple thing, particularly if you've been conditioned to believe that control is safety. But safety comes from within, from stability, not in guaranteed external checks. The more you learn detachment, the more you create peace. Not the sort of peace that results from having everything your own way, but the sort of peace which holds even when it doesn't. That inner peace is your foundation. From it, you can go after your dream with pleasure instead of tension. You can appreciate the path rather than frantically pursuing the goal. And when your energy is more relaxed and solid, what you want starts to come toward you with less opposition. You become compatible with it, not only in mind, but in resonance. You cease broadcasting lack and begin emitting trust. And in that place, receiving is unavoidable, not because you coerced it, but because you allowed it to arrive. Chapter 14. Surround sound. Raise the voices around you. The individuals and environments that you surround yourself with determine your perspective more than you know. Your mind continually soaks up energy, attitudes, and stories from those who surround you. Each conversation, each thought, each nuanced expression of belief makes a mark. It will either stretch you or shrink you. If you are living and breathing amid voices that continuously criticize what's wrong, voices that obsess about fear, lack, and limitation, your own mind will start to reflect that energy. Doesn't matter how self-disciplined you are, prolonged exposure to bad input sooner or later finds its way into your subconscious and begins affecting how you perceive yourself and your potential. Your environment is not neutral. It is either drawing you forward or drawing you backward. If you're attempting to nurture an abundance mentality, but you continue to have people around you who only notice obstacles, who gripe, who reaffirm doubt, it is like swimming up a current. You may make headway, but it will be tiresome and slow. Conversely, however, if you are with those who have faith in growth, who perceive potential, who speak possibility into their lives and yours, your advancement happens nearly effortlessly. You elevate to the level of the energy you are surrounded by. That's why being mindful of your environment is not a luxury, but a necessity. Raising the voices around you doesn't have to mean shutting everyone down. It means becoming aware of what you let affect you. It means deciding who gets to speak into your vision and who doesn't. Some people mean well but can't see beyond their own limitations. They might love you, but they project their fears onto you. They'll say things like, "Be careful. That's risky," or "Us kind of people don't get chances like that." If you take those voices at face value, they become part of your internal chatter. And once a belief has been planted inside you, it begins to influence your actions and your results. Guarding your energy involves being selective about which voices you permit to take hold. There is also the issue of self-talk, which is the loudest voice you will ever have to listen to. You can be surrounded by a supportive circle of people, but if your own voice is doubtful and critical, it will drown out everything else. Your own sense of self determines the tone for how you interact with the world. This is why merely raising others' voices is not sufficient. You have to raise your own as well. You must catch yourself when you say words of limitation or sabotage and substitute them with words that affirm your value, your ability, and your vision. With time, that inner conversation becomes a sort of mental surround sound that dictates everything you do. What you listen to is another source of surrounding energy. Social media, current events, entertainment, literature, and podcasting all input your mind. They either build on a sense of possibility or reinforce stories of fear and limitation. Most people take in negativity without even noticing, browsing through countless tales of drama, criticism, or comparison, and then ask yourself why they feel anxious or demotivated. Whatever you feed your mind is what you anticipate from life. If you desire to see abundance, you must surround yourself with ideas, narratives, and voices that mirror it. You must be as deliberate in your mental diet as you would be in your physical diet. One of the quickest ways to change your mindset is to raise the conversations you engage in. Rather than discussing issues, discuss ideas. Rather than reliving what didn't work, discuss what might work. Be around individuals who challenge you to think larger, not because they are challenging you, but because they see potential in you. When you hear possibility repeated frequently enough, it becomes part of your subconscious programming. It comes naturally to see opportunity rather than obstacles, to seek solutions rather than excuses, to proceed rather than pause. This is not to say that all of your people will have your vision or see your way. It is saying you must choose who gets to shape your perception and how much. You can love your people and still control how much access they have to your energy. You can love other people without letting their fear control your decisions. This is not isolation, it's about elevation. The more you curate your environment to reflect the mindset you are building, the easier it becomes to maintain that mindset when challenges arise. As you elevate the voices around you, you'll also find that your own voice starts to shift. You become someone who speaks encouragement, who inspires others, who holds a vision that lifts those around you. This creates a ripple effect. When you elevate your frequency, you impact the environment as much as it impacts you. Your energy is contagious, and now you are not only taking in positivity, you're generating it. Getting the right voices around you is not a single decision, but rather a habitual practice. It means constantly asking my ethics. Is this conversation nourishing my vision or starving it? Is this space allowing me to grow or making me small? The responses to those questions decide not only the quality of your perception, but the course of your life. When you align your space with the future you're building, your perception remains sharp, your energy stays robust, and your path ahead emerges with greater ease than you ever thought possible. Chapter 15, Become the Proof. There is a point along the path of changing your way of seeing where you know it's no longer about theory, no longer about journaling or affirmations or reading uplifting words. It's about embodiment. It's about being the living embodiment of the beliefs you say you have. It's one thing to tell you that you think life is going your way, that there is abundance, that your mind creates your reality. It's another matter altogether to live your days like those things are already happening and manifesting in the way you show up, in the way you behave, in the choices you make. Showing up as the proof is not about performance, it is about alignment. It is about living so grounded in your sense of favor and flow that it is unmistakable not only to others, but to yourself. Far too long have people waited for outcomes before they permit themselves to feel confident or sure. They wait for outside proof before they give themselves the power of triumph. But your life starts to change the minute you turn that formula around. Instead of believing it when you see it, you decide to believe it before you see it. And that belief informs the way you hold yourself, the way you talk, the way you react, the way you lead. You disown outsourcing confidence and begin to produce it from within. You become the demonstration of what you previously only dreamed was attainable. You put down the quotes and begin to live your own truth so intensely that your life is the message. To become the proof takes a consistent dedication to integrity, not moralistic, but energetic. It means your inner world and outer actions are of a piece. It means you are not talking one way and living another. What it means is that how you think, how you talk, and how you behave is consistent with the perception you've elected to live with. If you tell me you believe in abundance, then you don't talk as though there's never enough. If you declare that you believe you deserve love, then you do cease taking relationships that don't feel good about yourself. If you declare that you trust the timing of your life, then you cease freaking out each time something takes longer than it should. These decisions aren't always easy, but they are potent. They root your perception in the real world. As soon as you become the evidence, then you cease trying to persuade anyone of your journey. You are not asking people to see your vision and approve your progress. You are not constantly explaining. You are just living it. And in that subtle confidence, people start to take notice. They feel something different. They ask questions. They feel the energy change when they are with you. That's the power of aligned perception. It's not boisterous, but it is unmistakable. It doesn't try to convince. It moves others by being present, and it doesn't need to be perfect. It needs to be authentic and consistent. This is also a shift where you no longer wait for the right conditions before you embody the version of yourself you're evolving into. You don't require more money, a higher title, or ideal conditions to arrive with excellence. You bring it to every endeavor, regardless of how large or small the task is. You take the present moment as being deserving of your undivided attention. You declare your vision out loud even when nobody else can behold it yet. You rejoice in increments that others do not notice. You make commitments to yourself even when nobody is looking. These are the unseen steps that create the seen outcomes. These are the moments when you demonstrate to yourself that you already exist in resonance with the reality that you are invoking. Being the proof also enables you to lead by example. People don't change because you command them to, people change because they see what's possible via you. You are the evidence that perception births power. You are the reminder that peace can exist in the midst of chaos, clarity can exist in the midst of uncertainty, expansion is always possible if you are willing to view things differently. This impact does not necessitate a stage or a platform. It needs presence. It needs the bravery to live your life entirely, to claim your journey without apology, to have faith that your embodiment is sufficient to illuminate the path for others. This way is not about reaching some perfect destination. It's about keeping to the everyday discipline of living as if what you hold to be true is already so. It's about moving through your life with purpose, living every moment as a chance to commit to alignment. It's about being truthful with yourself when you find yourself operating outside of your vision and carefully bringing yourself back over and over again. And eventually, this becomes second nature. You don't have to force it anymore. You don't have to work at being the evidence you already are. When your perception is your foundation, and your behavior is the expression of that perception, you begin to live a reality that aligns with your internal world. Life is a reflection of your clarity. Circumstances rise to meet your conviction. Opportunities respond to your energy. And in this place, there is nothing to chase. There's just alignment, and in alignment, everything just flows. You don't need to say much. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't even need others to get you. You've become the proof, and that is far more effective than any explanation ever could. Chapter 16. The Flow State Life. There is a rhythm that awaits us all, a natural flow that, attuned to, is effortless, clear, and full of creative strength. It is not the privilege of the fortunate, nor is it a mystical blessing bestowed upon the select few. This rhythm is what most people refer to as flow, and it is available the instant you cease forcing, begin trusting, and give yourself permission to move in alignment with the intelligence of life itself. The state of flow is not merely a mental space in which things click and time dissolves. It is a lifestyle in which your inner and outer worlds are harmonized, in which your perception is lucid and your decisions concordant. The flow state life is not challengelessness. It is the presence of profound coherence. Living in flow does not indicate that everything always feels effortless, but it does indicate that you're no longer resisting the current of your own resistance. It means you're attuned to what's important, centered on what engages you, and responsive to what life offers instead of fixated on controlling it. Flow starts when you release the need to force outcomes and begin to trust your preparation, your way, and your inner wisdom. You don't have to have everything charted out to live in flow. You only need to be present, aware, and willing to follow what feels true even if it challenges your comfort. The biggest block to flow is overthinking. When your mind is filled with fear, second-guessing, or a need to be perfect, it shuts the door to your natural intelligence. Flow will not come through analysis. It comes through presence. It happens when you give up trying to figure everything out in your head and begin to listen to your instincts, your body, your energy. It's the time when you know ease isn't laziness and effort is not necessarily proof of aligned in flow. Action occurs, yet it is directed, not coerced. It is purposeful, not frenetic. You get more accomplished, not because you're accomplishing more, but because what you are accomplishing aligns with who you're becoming. Perception is at the heart of your capacity to enter and stay in flow. When you view life as something that you have to subdue, naturally you come at it with tension. You tense up. You labor more than you need to. But if you view life as a partner, a wise force working with your purpose, you cease tensing and begin co-creating. You learn to read the signs, trust the timing, and see delays as direction. You cease to try to work harder than the unknown and begin to move with the natural unfolding. This is not passive waiting. It is powerful attunement. Or what can a mountain be moved by if you can't? The flow state life is also about honesty. You cannot be in flow when you're betraying yourself. You cannot move with purpose when you're disregarding your truth. When you're a yes to things that suck the life out of you, when you're a yes to environments that numb you, when you're acting because you have to instead of because you're inspired, you're disrupting the flow. Flow needs alignment, and alignment sometimes needs boundaries. It means opting for authenticity over approval. It requires you to follow your energy, not your logic. It requires you to be willing to let go of what no longer fits, even if you were once perfectly suited for it. Flow exists where truth exists, and when you respect that truth, momentum is restored. Living in flow does not require everything to be predictable. Rather, it requires uncertainty to be tolerated without losing your center. When you are in the flow, you no longer have to plot out every minute detail. You learn to trust in the unfolding. You take one step at a time with complete presence, trusting that the next step will be revealed when it is required. This trust releases you from the stagnation of overplanning and from the fear of taking the wrong step. It enables you to stay flexible, resourceful, and receptive to roads you didn't anticipate. And because you don't have a set route, you have a better chance of arriving at the destination that best fits your vision. Emotion regulation is another central component of flow. You won't stay in flow if every interruption throws you off course. Obstacles will arise. Uncertainty will occur, but the more present you are in your perception, the sooner you can get back into alignment. This is not about repressing emotion. This is about feeling without losing your balance. You build emotional strength not by sidestepping struggle, but by facing it with awareness and translating it into terms of growth. Flow is not about circumventing life, it is about being completely present with it while deciding to move through it with elegance. The more you live in flow, the more life seems to greet you with synchronicity. Ideas come at the right time. People show up when you require them. Solutions appear that logic by itself couldn't have created. These experiences are not coincidental. They are manifestations of a greater harmony between your internal state and your outer reality. When you are in a high degree of internal alignment, you attract experiences that resonate at the same frequency. Life starts to feel less like a string of challenges and more like a rich dialogue between your energy and the world. This kind of living is not about avoiding responsibility or drifting through existence without form. It is about designing a life that feels roomy even in movement, steady even in flux, enlivened even in doubt. It is a life where your awareness is not reactive, but responsive, where you are not racing towards success, but moving into harmony with it, where you do not break under stress, but adjust with clarity. Flow is not something you impose, but something you let happen, and the more often you let it happen, the more your natural way of being. To be in flow is to trust yourself profoundly. It is to believe that you can deal with whatever comes up, that you are always supported, and that life is unfolding in ways that support your highest good. When you have that state of perception as your foundation, everything shifts, not because life gets simpler, but because you cease to resist the process. You start noticing each step as a blessing, each rest as meaningful, and every test as a chance to go back to your center. That is the flow state existence, not a place, but a means of navigating through the world with openness, trust, and alignment. Chapter 17. The flow is you. Somewhere along the path of changing your mind, you come to understand that flow you've been seeking isn't out there somewhere. It's not contained within a goal, an upcoming event, or a change in outside circumstances. It is not something that you find when you fill in a perfect checklist or obtain a certain level of validation. The flow is not other than yourself. It is you. It is your true nature when you remove the doubt, the resistance, the ancient narratives, and the borrowed limitations. When you refrain from trying to become and instead let yourself be, you touch base with the version of you that doesn't have to struggle into alignment. You are the one who initiates or stops the flow, not because you're doing anything bad, but because perception is strong and thought patterns are stubborn. If you think that life is difficult, your behavior will reflect that. If you think flow is uncommon, you won't be able to see it even if it's in front of you. But when you come back to the knowledge that your perception creates your experience and your experience solidifies your perception, you start to see that you've always had the power to select something different, not once, but over and over again, not in your head, but in your gut. And that repeated selection creates a new normal. This change isn't about denying you still have problems. It's about seeing those problems from a new space. You no longer make them personal. You cease to let them define your value. You cease to view them as proof that it isn't working and begin to see them as part of the cycle of creation. Even in opposition, even in waiting, even in doubt, you come to feel a sense of connection to something deeper. Stillness becomes quiet assurance that things are progressing in your direction even when they appear stagnant. That silence isn't the lack of progress, it is the room where your energy calibrates, where your vision ripens, where your future self is being sculpted in silence. Eventually, you become the proof of all that you ever had to prove yourself to. You live the transition. You are the energy of someone no longer needing proof because you are proof. You draw without pursuing. You inspire without forcing. You create without attachment. And the life that starts to emerge around you mirrors the inner transformation you've undergone. No longer compelled by a sense of urgency, but led by a sense of clarity. No longer responding to each test as a crisis, but meeting it with presence and wisdom. You've quit resisting life and begun dancing with it. This isn't passivity. This is power cleansed and redirected. What you used to see as coincidence now becomes affirmation. What you used to refer to as luck, now you know as alignment. The people you used to feel disconnected from either come up to meet your energy or fall back quietly. The habits that used to drain you lose their hold. The old stories that once cycled in your head now ring hollow, out of date, irrelevant because they no longer resonate at the frequency you're living from. You no longer define yourself by struggle. You no longer identify with the things that you've had to overcome. You've rewritten the script so thoroughly that the past no longer controls your future. It told you, but no longer restricts you. In this place, desire feels less weighty. It's not a matter of fixing you or plugging up a hole. It's a matter of expression, creativity, contribution. You long from abundance, not scarcity. You move toward your visions not with desperation, but with devotion. You don't grasp, you receive. You don't prove, you express. Your perception now serves you not because it's perfect, but because it's been purified. It's been trained to see beyond survival and into possibility. You have faith in life not because life is always easy, but because you've seen what happens when you cease to resist its timing and begin flowing with its wisdom. The last move is subtle yet deep. You no longer perceive flow as something into which you enter. You realize that you are the flow. You are not apart from the intelligence that directs expansion, creation, and alignment. It flows through you when you're in your presence, when you're genuine, when you're able to have faith in the process over the plan. The flow is not somewhere you go. It's where you live. And the more you can remember that, the less you'll try to get it and the more you'll just live it. Your whole life will be a reflection of that inner alignment, a consistent unfolding of clarity, ease, and purposeful action. This isn't about achieving some kind of perfect state and maintaining it. It's about learning how to get back to it. When life gets loud, you come back to presence. When things don't feel right, you get calibrated. When fear murmurs, you greet it with truth. You no longer have to live in resistance because you know the path back to center. And from center, you lead, you create, you live. Not from pressure, but from peace. This path you've walked through perception has never been one of fixing who you are. It's always been about remembering. The flow is not the goal. It is your default. And now, since you've changed the way you look, the way you feel, the way you choose, you are living the very thing you used to dream of finding. The flow is you, and you finally come home. Chapter 18, The Return to Power. There's a moment in every process of transformation when the change becomes permanent, not because conditions make it so, but because your own eyes don't allow you to turn back. You've witnessed too much. You've felt too much. You've learned the distinction between reactivity and response, between forcing and allowing, between controlling and co-creating. You no longer have the luxury of assuming your mind does not create your world, that your energy does not generate your results, or that your perception is not a creative power. What was once ideas or inspiration has now become embodiment. This is the return to power. Not the kind of power that overwhelms or thrusts, but the calm, earthy power that grows from understanding who you are and how reality is when you're in sync with it. Coming back to your power doesn't mean you never feel afraid again. It means you no longer let fear masquerade as truth. You can see it, you can acknowledge it, even experience it in full without letting it have the power to lead you. You no longer surrender your future to your past. You no longer postpone your clarity to someone else's opinion. You no longer wait for the perfect moment and start making it with your presence. Power is not in knowing all the answers. Power is in how you show up in the unknown. It's how you read discomfort, how you keep your vision, and how you keep showing up when there is no external validation. This return to power also involves fully owning your life. Not blame, not guilt, but ownership. You know that your decisions, your response, and your perception are always your choice. Even when you are not able to alter what is taking place, you can always decide how you will respond to it. This is where authentic freedom resides, not in the fantasy of control but in the autonomy of perception. You no longer hold out for conditions to get better before you permit yourself to feel stable or secure or peaceful. You bring those vibrations into the here and now, no matter what's happening in your life. And when you do that in a consistent manner, the outside starts to mold itself to keep up with your inner stability. Embracing your power also changes your dynamic with time. You no longer rush, chase, or validate yourself with timelines that were never your own to start. You no longer compare your journey with anyone else because you understand perception determines pace. You see that there is no behind, just alignment. You have faith that your timing isn't wrong. It's being choreographed. This does not equate to stopping to work on your dreams. It equates to working on them without desperation. You grasp them with confidence, not anxiety. You are no longer fueled by fear of missing out, but by a greater understanding that nothing intended for you will pass you by if you continue to show up aligned. You also start to see your impact, not because you want to control people, but because you've realized how energy sets the stage for behavior. Your presence starts to have a frequency that impacts rooms, conversations, decisions. People don't always get it, but they feel it. They react to it. This is not charisma. This is coherence. This is the output of a perception that has been distilled, concentrated, and anchored. You're no longer pursuing energy. You're creating it. You're not drawing people to your vision. You're becoming the vision, and that incarnation attracts what's in alignment and deflects what's not. Coming back to your power also involves higher standards, not only in what you tolerate from others but in what you tolerate from yourself. You are less accepting of draining thoughts, shrinking environments, or energy fragments that break you down. You no longer excuse what you know needs to change. You do the work without requiring approval. You make choices that align with your future, not your fear. And when the plan doesn't work, you don't crumble. You adjust. You go back to your perspective, re-grasp your center, and return to your strength over and over again. Here, boundaries are natural, not imposed. You don't have to assert them loudly because your energy already defines them. You don't have to persuade others to honor them because you no longer accept what does not align with your peace. Your awareness has taught you that no doesn't mean rejection, it means redirection. That choosing you is not selfish, it's survival. That creating space for your own growth is not selfish, it's your duty. You're moving differently now, not because you're attempting to prove yourself, but because you've recalled what it feels like to be fully attuned to your own truth. Returning to power is not the finish line of your journey. It is the start of a new way of living. It's the place where perception is now practice, theory is now embodiment, and alignment is now your default. You no longer wonder, how do I get there? Because you've come to see that there is no there, only further depths of truth to experience. You start to trust the unfolding, not the end result. You start to trust yourself, not the din. You don't require certainty from the outside world because you've coaxed it out of you. Power at its greatest level is peace. It is presence. It is the potential to stay centered, clear, and grounded no matter what life brings. It is the potential to guide your energy as opposed to being led by your emotions. It is the practice of choosing your perception over and over again, not because it's easy, but because you've experienced what happens when you do. The return to power is the return to you. Not the one formed of fear or doubt, but the one that was there before the world instructed you on who to be, the one who already recognized that perception creates reality. And you don't just believe it now, you live it.